I swear it's the last time you see my face this morning on stage. You'll have to bear with Tommy for another talk. But this talk this morning is really tying up and linked to the previous two talks we already gave. It really ties to the work Tommy and I are doing under the umbrella of INARC, the International Network for ALS Research and Care. So INARC was created now soon to be 2 years ago and really started from the realization that we needed a specific network for staff members involved either in research or in clinic or in both. And for staff members who are not doctors, because doctors already have a seat at the table, not so much so for OT, PT, SLP, research nurses, assistant nurses as well, doing a lot of data collection. So we wanted to kind of create a network specifically to address these needs. And when it comes to intersection between ALS care and research, we really see it as a continuum. And this is the case usually in the biggest clinics or the biggest sites working on ALS, not so much for the smallest sites because the realities are different. So that's what we're going to talk to you about. And so we're filling up the shoes of Matthias and Vanessa, who couldn't make it today. But we're also working on this with Corey Straub and Romy Verschoor. So it's an effort that 6 people are invested in. So when it comes to, and you know this better than I do, but when it comes to multidisciplinary clinic care and research, it's been associated and proven to be associated with longer survival time for people living with ALS. So this is becoming the gold standard. However, we still meet people living with ALS who are followed by a neurologist, not specialized in ALS, that they may see once a year. So it is still, even though we know it brings many benefits to the table, we know this is not the standard for many patients out there. It improves quality of life, and it does mean that as a patient, you will meet several key players. You will meet people with very different expertise. I feel like we've talked about experts and expertise this morning quite a lot, and this is really tying up when it comes to clinical care in a multidisciplinary setting. This also comes into play in research. We've heard talks, and we will hear talks in the week about people with very different specialties within research, within the ALS field. So the idea behind this intersection is how one can feed from the other and vice versa. We know that some amazing projects have stemmed from nurses who observed something they found curious, weird, intriguing in clinic, and that has stemmed into people with a very clinic profile into leading up with research projects. So this is what we want to highlight here. This is a figure that is kind of showing this intersection that is true both for patients but also caregivers and how they intersect with general practitioners, but also PT, OT, rehab. I know in the Netherlands they have specific rehab doctors. We don't have that in Sweden, but this is, again, very country specific. And what I would highlight in this team approach is that there is also a huge teaming up with the entire support network of the people living with ALS that you're working with. And that's for you.
So as Juliet introduced INARC to you, we had our first meeting organized also by Ursula in Barcelona in 2023, and we had 13 countries represented with 21 sites. And there was like quite a variation amongst like larger sites, smaller sites, and also composition of the team. So we asked like prior to the people attending the meeting, like, what does your team have? Like, how many people does your team have? And we created it here, a slide like, and these are the numbers on research staff. So it could be vary from observational trials, interventional trials, but just to give an idea like how many people are working on clinical trials in ALS. This is not only across Europe because Canada was present as well. And you see there's quite a number of variation, but despite this variation, I think it's important if you work with people living with ALS, whether you like deliver care or you focus on research. Since we do not have like a treatment for the disease, it is important that you know that research is out there and is needed to find a solution and a cure for the disease. So if you are a care nurse and you consult with your patient and your patient is not participating into a clinical trial, but your patient is willing to participate into the clinical trial, it's not necessarily that you need to execute that trial, but at least know the members in your team, but also linked to the previous presentation, know other hospitals near you that run clinical trials and know that who you should reach out to fulfill that unmet need of finding a treatment for this disease.
So what we did, one of the things we did this summer in Barcelona at the INARC meeting is that we sent a questionnaire to the participants before the meeting was held, and we asked them, is clinical practice and research combined at your site? And the majority, 58% of the participants answered yes. And we were curious, we were talking with Tommy this morning when we were rehearsing our slides, and we were curious, by a show of hand, could you raise your hand if in your clinic or in your work setting you're combining research and care? Yeah, I would say it looks like 58% to me. So this is interesting because as you talk with people coming from very different settings, you realize their realities are very different. They're not funded in the same way. Sometimes when, especially with smaller sites, your nurse has to also be a medical secretary and pull out admin work and pull out a lot of nursing duties, but she's also helping on the clinical trials, and then she's also handling the phone, and so this, of course, multitasking does not allow you to nurture research projects. So this is also very, it reflects a lot of the realities of the site. An example that we wanted to share with you is something that was shared at the last INARC meeting is, so the spiritual care counselor, not something we're all very familiar with, so spiritual care counselor, not associated with any religion, not a psychologist, but here to support people with ALS, their families, but also the staff with spiritual needs. From the Montreal clinic in Canada, she joined as a purely clinic staff member working for the clinic. And as she was reading on mindfulness, as she was reading on the spiritual care literature, she decided to apply for a research project. And now in Montreal, they're doing this mindfulness research project that they have implemented in their clinic with their patients. And that was, I think, a good example of how a clinical team member who may not think of research in their daily practice, they saw a problem and they were thinking of, how can I address this? How can I fix it? How can I implement things to make it change, or at least to better understand the margin of the problem? And I think that was a good example. And we see this happen, but we also need to acknowledge that it can flourish in an environment that allows you to do so. And when we talk about intertwining research and care, it comes with quite a lot of pros and cons. If I take the good side of things, and I'll leave the bad side to Tommy, the strength of merging care and research are that you're working with a shared knowledge, so everybody's expertise can feed the everybody's projects. You are already on site with the people you need to interact with, so it's very easy to collaborate. If you're a PT but you want to start a project collaborating with SLP, usually you're a corridor away, so it's quite easy to stem those new research projects. The accessibility of the care is going to be quite easy. You don't have to have transportation for, let's say you're working with the same person with ALS and you want to do a multidisciplinary research care project. They can see everyone at the same time, at the same place, and that's a huge plus. Patients already have this trust and this bond with the people they usually see in clinic when they now see them in research, or vice versa, even though we see that less likely. And so that's a huge bonus when it comes to then presenting the research, and they would usually feel more comfortable asking you super blunt questions instead of creating this relationship from the ground up. And then, as we see it, as we discussed within INARC members, we see it as really reducing the patient burden, this collaboration. They usually, what was brought back to us is that there was a sense of safety of being handled by the same people, both for research and care, because they had the feeling that it was one same team taking care of them for all of the aspects of their disease, either the clinical management or the research they wanted to do. You want to go with the bad stuff? If there's such thing.
See who will deliver better. No, I will just discuss with you like potential limitations, because there's not one size fits all. Like the visits might get longer, but it also will if you have some creativity, like for example, if you administer the ALS FSR, if you perform neurological examination, you can do that at once for the clinical, for if a patient is participating in an interventional study, please make sure that that rater is certified and is the same person over the course of the clinical trial. But like this information that you gather once during that day can be transported into research. And I don't think like research nurses or research staff are ticking boxes on the ALS FSR. Oh, okay. Oh, you lost more than 10% weight. Oh, you have excess saliva. Tick box. There are actions coming out of these like results. So I think at least that's how it is working in our clinic. Like I'm fully focused on the clinical trials, but I have a close link with our clinical care team, that if I have a person with excess saliva, or we weigh that person, we see there is weight loss due to dysphagia, I can just run one floor down and say, oh, hey, can you just inform this person about a gastrostomy? Or I can just at least start the conversation. But it are longer visits, so requires maybe facility, like your facility, if your facility have beds available so people can rest, that might help it. And all personnel that is in the multidisciplinary team, that might be slightly difficult to have them all available at all times. So I think it's important to have everyone in your team at least have a sense of what the other team member is delivering. Like you do not need to give that full explanation, but at least like maybe tell the patient, I heard about like this, I can refer you to, or I know what a gastrostomy is. Did anyone talk with you about it? If not, I'm happy to make an appointment to get more information. And it can be slightly more costly as like the visits get longer. Like, but it can also be, I think, more cost efficient, because like you do not have your person living with ALS come into your clinic like every 2 to 3 weeks. It can be a limited number of visits. And it's not always easy to solve the issues within research. Like different clinics have different setups. So there are some hospitals that have like a clinical research wing, and at one day the nurse will see people with cancer in research, and the other day they see people with MND. So therefore, if you do this setup, if you do this merging with ALS and care and research, might be important to have some dedicated staff that is able to understand what is the cause of the disease, what comes with the disease, and not only like doing the slow vital capacity, ticking the boxes on the ALS FSR, but also knowing what are the consequences of the outcome of the ALS FSR, for example.
And one thing I'd just like to add to that is that the worst case scenario I could think of when it comes to intersection between care and research. Of course, the goal is not for all of you clinic staff members to come back home and say, I'll start research projects. That's not realistic. However, the worst case scenario would be for a research staff to meet a patient seen in the clinic of your site And they have seen neurologists, they have seen nurses, they have seen other staff members, and nobody told them about trials. Or the nurses from your clinic have no idea about the clinical trials your site is offering. That would be the worst case scenario, because then, first of all, you can't collaborate with your clinic team by asking them, hey, by the way, do you know what I'm doing right now, trial-wise? And we're talking about intervention now. It can be other, like observational research projects. But for clinical trials, when you have that strong sense of collaboration and of continuity, a nurse will be able to, when they meet patients, think, oh, that patient may actually qualify for the trial our site is doing. I'll flag that patient to the research team. So this also needs to be really seen as a whole. And same, when you're going to see a person living with ALS for a clinical trial, you're going to see them much more often than the clinic members. So you'll also be able to flag back things you've noticed, or progression, or updates that you may have missed otherwise.
Just watch that wire while you're... So Matthias and Vanessa, aka Tommy and Juliet, thank you very much for your presentation. Do you have any questions in the room? Any questions? Oh, Sarah.
I'll take the online microphone. So we do a lot of these similar things. We do have, of course, we do kind of a pre-screening of the people coming into the clinic to determine who might meet with the research. We do merge their clinic visits when they match up at the same time. We don't merge all of them, but say they're coming back for a particular visit. My question, though, is when you said it more costly, because if they're a research trial patient, they don't get charged for any of the care.
What you have to avoid is that the care that you're delivering will become to charge for the research project that you are doing. So, and vice versa. So what you want to avoid is that you're delivering care under the research project, and that, or you do research under the care project. That's what you want to avoid.
So just to give you guys an idea, we have a research visit in the chart, and then we'll have the multi-disc. And if anything is duplicated, it can't be charged to their insurance. It has to be charged to the
And I think that's
study.
That's for the majority of the country. That's also happening in our country. But you just need to make, you need to be aware of that is existing, that you don't either double book or that you do like, as a, yeah.
Lovely, thank you. I think we'll leave that there. Thank you. Thank you, Julia and Tommy.